Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today. Sorry, it was like a very dramatic pause there for no reason. But yeah, what are we going to talk about today? Have y'all seen the new episode of Digital Circus? It was pretty good, is what I'd say. Pretty fun times. Yeah, no, I'm not going to spoil you on it if you haven't seen it. I mean, it's on YouTube. You can literally go and watch it if you want. What am I going to talk about today? I don't really know. But good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 9:42 p.m. on Saturday, October 5th, 2024. I've got no backlog currently, so I need to record at least something today. Had a D&D session. It was a pretty good one. I think it was more of a lore kind of building one. It was a two-part one. One, it was a bit more silly, I suppose, because it was meant to be a bit more light-hearted, but then also at the same time it was meant to be a 1-2 punch of dropping lore bits and pieces, and so that's kind of what I'm doing now, really, sort of like dropping ideas of lore, like things about the world, as well as character stories and things for them to threads for them to unravel on, should they want to. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, I don't know. It's slowly the sort of mantle of the control being passed over, I suppose, from the DM to the players, which is a necessary part, I think, or things. But of course, you need to give your players enough, meat to chew on, as they say, enough things to work with, so they actually have direction. But yeah, there's not really much else to say about it, I suppose, because anything I could say could be spoilers, and anything I can't say is probably not much of an interesting commentary. So let's find our conversation that we're going to talk about today. I'm not really sure what else to talk about. Like, I haven't really done much of note today except for D&D, to be honest. Yeah, I don't really know. Is that r/games? That's something we can talk about. Oh, yeah, like the Until Dawn remake. That was something I was reading about. Until Dawn, if you don't know, is a game by... Ooh, I should remember this off the top of my head, but I don't. Until Dawn Studio. Supermassive. I was like Supergiant. I was like, no, Supergiant's not. But Supergiant's the Hades one. It's something like Supergiant, but it's not Supergiant or whatever. Supermassive games. They do Until Dawn. They do a lot of they do all of it, like the Dark Pictures anthology, I think, and things like it. Where Until Dawn really sort of taps into the sort of classic slasher horror movie tropes, but it makes it more like an interactive movie by playing it through a video game medium. And honestly, it did pretty well, I think. I think it basically 100% nailed what it was going for. Is it the best game in the world? No, of course not. Like, there's certain things lacking about it here and there, but it is a fantastic interactive movie experience, is probably what I'd say. And people like thoroughly enjoyed it. Did I play it? No, but I watched someone play it, and I was like, this is a grand old time. But yeah, they had like a remake of it, which was being released now, and people are very much critiquing it because it's like the atmosphere of the entire remake lost what made the original so special. And I was like, that's a fair point, because I was looking at it and the atmosphere's completely changed. Before, the original one had like this really sort of dark, gloomy, spooky atmosphere with its like very dark, limited light color palette, and then in the new one it's like it's sunrise basically. There's like soft, warm yellow hues. Everything is actually quite well lit rather than it all being cold and dark. And I was just like, this seems like the wrong aesthetic maybe for a horror game. But to be fair, that was just the intro portion, so maybe the intro portion is meant to look like that. Maybe that was the original artistic direction, I don't know. But it's a thing with like remakes, redos, etc, gloss ups. At any time things change in general, people tend to be rather resistant to it. So I'm not saying that whether this Until Dawn thing is right or wrong, or is the best choice or not the best choice, or people like it or don't like it for legitimate or illegitimate reasons, but there is an inherent bias within a lot of us to be rather resistant to change, I think. And you need to, the first part, I suppose, of becoming self-aware about these sort of things, well, not self-aware, being like a good critic in this sense, is being aware of this bias and being able to overcome it in a sense that you're like, yes, I can put aside the fact that unease from something changing to truly reveal the content which is in front of me, And I'm not saying this is not meant to be a moment, but like every time something changes and people complain, they're wrong. No, and this is not meant to be like a every change is bad or whatever, and things should be kept and preserved exactly the way they are. No, like everything has its context. Everything has a situation it's in where the judgment called can vary differently and wildly between them. And of course, execution and results do, as whether you like it or not, influence. May not influence the choice of the original call, but may influence the outcome, right? That's just inevitable. Because I was thinking about this as well, because League of Legends, a game I played for almost 15 years now, it's just about 14 years, now I think about it, has changed a lot throughout the years, and there's like some things which are changed and people love it, and some things that change and people hate it, and which of these are subjectively, objectively good or bad is hard to say, I think. Like, I suppose it kind of depends on what your metrics is. But the reason I was thinking about this is because the fact that Teemo, but one of the most iconic champions in entire League of Legends, in fact, I would argue is the mascot of League of Legends as a character, has basically gotten a huge glow up. Like, his model has not been updated. I think it's only been updated with textures since he's come out. But really, recently, they basically visually reworked him to gloss him up to modern day standards. And in my opinion, I think he looks fantastic. I think he looks great. He very much embodies, I suppose, the sort of newer, much prettier aesthetics things. Like, he's much more animated, he's much more lively. There's a lot of character and emotion with all of his things. I will say there is a small caveat that he's changed, like personality-wise, like character-wise. Before, he was basically someone who was almost, I would say, a secret psychopath. Maybe the best way to put it. But now he's much more like a ignorant destroyer or something, someone who causes a lot of destruction and harm in his wake, but is completely oblivious to it. And I actually think that's such a quite nice direction to it, because to me, I always felt like Teemo's sort of like underlying layers of just like savagery were a bit random here and there, to be perfectly honest. So very much of a different like story about what's going on in League of Legends. This much more sort of places him, I think, fittingly in this sort of like trickster, like Fae-esque realm, which is kind of like what Bandles, that's what we call it. What are they called? Yordles are to me. They're sort of, they feel very tricksy. They feel very whimsical in that sense. And I was like, this feels like it was more aligned, but maybe not. I don't know. You might argue that, hey, if they are actually just like malevolent creatures a lot of the time, that's what the trickery is based off. And I was like, okay, then technically we're going into different definitions of Fae and whatever, you know. The long and short of it is, to me, is like, yeah, okay, I think this direction can work, and it does it pretty well. But really, I'm judging more for animation in the end. Because I'm going to be honest, that sort of headcanon is not reflected at all really within the old Teemo's sort of animations, or like the way he's presented. Like, it's presented a little bit in some of his voice lines when he goes like, "That's gonna sting," which is definitely has some sort of darker undertones to it. But it's not like his animations really show that. He just sort of has maybe a bit more maniacal laugh, but again, that's voiceover, isn't it? So yeah, but you know, some people absolutely hate it. Like there's some crazy comments I read from him about which, might I be clear, everyone is subject to their own opinion, and subjectivity is something which cannot have a definitive right or wrong answer. If you like the old one more, that's more power to you, to be perfectly honest. Like, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But some of them, like, were just like, his old walk was objectively better than his new one, and I'm like, not some of them, one of them I read. Let's not strawman falsy here. And I was just like, what? There's no way. You look at his old animation, it was like, this is objectively a better animated thing than a new one. That one I sort of read and was like, this person has those nostalgia glasses on. This person is because it's changed. Well, I don't know for certain. Maybe they actually do objectively think that the old one is better, which is fair enough from an animation perspective. I don't agree in the slightest, but you know, people can think that. That's fair enough. I mean, I'm sure there's times, you know, like I'm trying to think like, oh, someone's giving me like a really fancy expensive wine and then like a really cheap like off like can of wine or something, and then I drink it and I'm like, oh, I kind of prefer the canned one or something, you know. Maybe the other one's objectively, you could argue, a better wine because it's got more sort of like complicated depth or flavour. It does like everything the original one does and better. But if I like the other one more, then I like the other one more, and there's not much to it. And that's like, I suppose the inherent, not flaw, but the inherent trouble with subjectivity is because it is subjective. There is no definite answer. And by the nature of the internet, the fact that you run into millions and millions of opinions every single day, you'll get some people's opinions who are just, you know, completely different or maybe unsubstantiated. And I think it's very easy to jump into immediate sort of outrage when you can take a step back and think about it through, and then you can decide whether outrage is warranted or not. Anyway, but yeah, the sort of like reluctance of things to change is always, you know, it can always be a bit of an inhibitor. I can't even remember what was the first thing I was talking about which started this off, because I didn't think it was Teemo originally I was going to talk about, but here we are. I think the Teemo one looks great, to be honest. I don't even know if I've seen all of his new splash arts or whatever, but it's about time he's got an update. So many more champions also need an update, but I'm glad that at least some of them are happening. But yeah, some people don't like it. Fair enough if you don't like it. I can't say I always agree with it. Oh, I like the lore part. I understand more, I think, because it feels like a bigger tonal shift in direction. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm not also the target audience. I don't really play Teemo, to be honest. But yeah, but it doesn't mean that critique should not be allowed or anything. Like, the reason that critique happens is so that changes can be made, so things can appeal more to perhaps the audience that it was targeted towards. That's what, like, you know, focus groups are for, right? Like, it'd be crazy if you're like, focus groups can't critique things anymore. That's not what I mean to say. I'm just saying, you know, be careful with your initial reactions. While intuition is a good thing to pay attention to, it's also important to understand that intuition is very biased towards things like that and resistance to change. So you're going to take a step back and evaluate first. I know this feels like an obvious thing to say, but, you know, sometimes obvious things need to be spelled out. Or sometimes in this case, they just sort of need to be restated, but in a not particularly deep way, is probably how I describe it. Yeah. I don't know. Whether that's good or bad, I suppose, is a sort of whole different thing. Like, I remember talking about this with Seraphine when she came out. It was the last time I did like a League of Legends champion analysis or something. And my long shot with Seraphine was like, I like what could have been, but I feel like it just sort of missed the mark a little bit here and there. But Teemo one's like, I don't know, because they feel like reasonably different enough flavors that it's sort of just like, it kind of depends on what your take is on this character at the end. And I kind of like the sort of like hapless destruction, which can happen, but I also understand if you like the sort of like cute but deadly side that he had before. And it's sort of like, alright. What can you do about it? I don't know. I mean, it's the power of a fanon, anyway, the fan headcanon, is that oftentimes it can overtake the truth in the first place. I mean, you can see how often characters can be misrepresented from the media properties they partake in when people completely see them in the wrong light, or, you know, overzealously attach them to one thing or another. I mean, with Digital Circus is what I was talking about. Like, people say with Digital Circus, like, Jax is like, oh, he's like a jerk, but with a heart of gold. When I'm like, really, this is fan canon, to be honest, because he's been basically nothing but a jerk in every single episode he's been in. Which is fine. Like, I don't have anything wrong against jerk characters, to be honest, but it's sort of like, you got to be able to separate the canon from the fanon. And understand when one crosses into the other, and when one is something which is like you prefer or not prefer, and that's okay, you know. I guess this is just a really long-winded way of saying, hey, you know, different opinions are okay, just like understand. As long as they don't hurt anyone. Let's maybe put a little bit of a caveat on all of that, rather than making it far too generalized from anything else. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, to be perfectly honest. Apparently Yumi is coming to TFT. Learned that from a friend. Yumi and Halloween, Bewitching, sorry, Yumi. Oh, yawning. Bewitching Yumi, which I'm just like, oh no! That's how they get me back to TFT. Making a Yumi little character. Not Yumi as like a unit, Yumi as like a tactician, I believe they're called. And she's very cute. I don't know what the next skins are coming out, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, what are we going to talk... What else can we talk about this? I don't know. Changing? All about changes? All that comes and change. Ooh. Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. I don't know. You just sort of got to get... what is that a bias out name? Bias against things that change. Maybe it's like cognitive bias? Cognitive bias against change? Status quo bias is a cognitive bias based in emotion, which results in a preference for maintaining a one state of affairs. Okay, I guess that kind of... Or the default bias. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense. Like, sorry, not that kind of makes sense. That kind of aligns with what I was saying, right? The current baseline is taken as reference points. Any change on that baseline is perceived as a loss or gain. Ah, I never thought about what I was saying, but in a positive light instead, right? Interesting. I mean, the thing with these cognitive biases is like it's so hard to like completely separate yourself from these biases. It's more about identifying them and identifying when they've had an influence over things, right? There is something which is like a bias or something, isn't there? Where it's like you calling out a cognitive... No, not cognitive bias. What are they called? Like, what's too colloquial called? It's like a debate thing or something. Oh, fallacy, that's a word. I was thinking of a fallacy. So I got them a little bit muddled there. When it's like, oh, you calling out someone using an argumentative fallacy and their argument does not invalidate their argument, right? Because they can still be saying something true while using a fallacy, right? I got all these different fallacies in my word. Biases, fallacies, so many... Turkey illusion, what on earth is this one? Surprising result from a break in the trend if one does not know the cause or framework conditions of this trend. What's about turkeys? It's nothing up there based on its past. Oh, I see. Yeah. So I don't know. Don't be resistant to change. Be resistant to change. Understand that change and not change are both state of beings. And it's... I don't know. I don't know where else I was going with this. I don't think I really had like a nice little capstone to pin off. It was just something that was on my mind. I was like, I think Fatimo visual update is nice. The voice lines, I understand the critique behind it at very least. But I don't know. I don't really mind either way. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this episode off here. I've been saying nothing for the past, like, whatever, hour. 20 minutes, not been an hour. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been dear darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now.